Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. It's finally time. I am finally covering the end of the series of the Wheel of Time. Specifically, the last battle through the epilogue of A Memory of Light, which is book 14, the final book in the series. Although Brandon Sanderson was the one to complete the end of the series after Robert Jordan's passing, so much of Robert Jordan is in this book. Many of the scenes were written by him before he passed. And I am so happy to be covering this for you guys. These videos are a summary, but also with notes of what I like and dislike about the books. We have a lot to cover, a lot of pages of notes. Taking the notes for the last chapters of The Wheel of Time was just basically me rereading the book itself. I attempted to skim, but I ended up just basically reading a lot of it again, which made me weep at times. And I'm having a newfound energy about the Wheel of Time and talking about it since it's been months since I finished it. But I finally have the energy, and especially after attending the Wheel of Time panel at the Dragonsteel convention, I feel like I can really get into it and talk about my passion for it and my thoughts. So let's start with the last battle. This chapter, chapter 37, titled The Last Battle, is 200 pages. It's a whole 200-page chapter. And to be honest, that makes sense with the momentum of it all. It is a lot to cover, but I didn't really mind the pacing of it because the point of view switches so much that you are just getting that sort of Sanderlange of momentum. Let's just jump right in. So, at the beginning of Chapter 37, The Last Battle, we open with Lan, who, with other company, is attacking the Sharons? The Sharons? I want to call them the Sharons. In my head every time, it's just so silly. But the Sharons and the Trollocs. Lan and company are attacking the Sharons and the Trollocs. Then the POV switches to Elaine. She is fighting the Drakkar with a Thunderweave. The Shanshan are hesitant to allow their captives to heal despite the advantage. They don't like capital H healing. So Matt is worried about spies overhearing, so he kind of keeps his battle plans private. We see Uno, who is ordered to retreat, and after Dimandred kills Quamisa and Einar with Balefire, he sees the value in retreating, that putting yourself at risk is not always the wise move. Logain releases the power of a 39-person circle, and it's a struggle. I think it's such a enticing, powerful thing, kind of addictive that way, and it's hard to let go. And his goal is to find the seals and kill time. In Gawain's POV, he is recognizing that he is Egwene's shadow, but he still wants to help, so he puts on the rings of the blood knives, hoping that he can have some advantage. We also get to see using the gateways to basically view the battle. It's like viewing gateways, basically live TV via gateway. We get to see Tam using the void as he taught Rand to fire arrows at Trollocs across the river. I really enjoy the points of view of Pavara and Andral. That was sort of more from Brandon Sanderson's mind, but it gave him a way to give the perspective of what happened with Logain and Time, but also what a great couple. And I love their growth together. I love that Andral is not necessarily the best fighter, but he's really good with gateways. I just love a lot about them and their interactions and how their kind of bond allows them to basically read each other's minds. At the beginning of the chapter, they are fighting together. Andral is able to use his gateways to cut a creature in half, which is awesome. Pavara is able to weave a gateway, and Andral is surprised because you're not supposed to be able to channel if someone else is sort of leading a circle that you're in, but she claims that it's an accident. Matt is sort of navigating the intricacies of battle, and he recognizes that there's a spy in their mix, and they need to be wary of that spy, but that they also might be able to use a spy to their advantage. Rand is shown a vision by the Dark One of a possible future where his peers are turned basically to the dark side, and his three loves, Min, Avienda, and Elaine, are tortured, and he denies this future, which is, on brand for Rand, but these scenes with Shaitan, or the Dark One, are very, very powerful. And even though he does deny these things, it feels very real in the moment to watch this happen and to not take it as if it is real. Egwene is healing these balefire cracked rocks, because balefires affecting the world around them, affecting the pattern. And she does this with a weave that she doesn't fully understand, but says that it feels right. And then she notices that Gawain is missing. We then see Gawain's POV. He believes himself worth the risk. He wants to do something, so he tries to kill Demandred. They duel. The advantage of the rings isn't quite enough, and he gets stabbed in the stomach. At one moment, Demandred compliments Gawain's use of the sword, but tells him that he must not simply wield it, but become the sword itself. And then Gawain gets on a horse and leaves. We then see Fael's perspective. She and the caravan see a gateway in the Blight, but it's guarded by the male Aiel channelers. Perrin ends up waking up in Verlaine's palace, which is kind of ironic, but there's no scandal involved there. And he learns of Fael's fate to a bubble of evil, not believing her dead, however. And then he sleeps knowing he needs to rest. He kind of has no choice given how hard he's been working. Andral and Pavara discuss how to get the seals from Mazrim Time, while also sort of falling in love, listening to one another's thoughts. It's very sweet. After fighting some of the male Aiel channelers, the Samansai, I think is how you say it, Ruark is taken by Heslam, who uses compulsion to make him hers. The quote I wrote down from the book said that he was leaving behind the men he had called brothers. And that kind of broke my heart. Rand shows the Dark One his possibility of a world where the Two Rivers is a city flourishing, where there's peace without conflict, but then the Dark One challenges him, and Rand says that darkness exists only when light fails, when it flees. He says, "I will not fail, I will not flee." Rand has a lot of obviously amazing quotes in this, but I just love his determination, and I like this battle of the mind, of this like spiritual battle. It's very, very cool. We go to Sylviana's perspective. She's trying to convince Egwene to pass the bond with Gawain to her, knowing that the pain he's in and his potential death could ruin Egwene. But instead, they plan to approach the Heights to save him. Elaine talks with Brigitte about her lost memories, and now Brigitte can really only remember the present. It's really sad. And then Matt gives Galad one of the medallions that will protect him from channelers, as he is told to slay as many Sharran channelers as he can. In Matt's POV, he is observing Tam's men fight Trollocs. Logain is granted a chance to face Demandred, and then Matt and Tuan try to fake a split with the Shan-Chan, hoping that the spy will buy into the fact that they're, like, fighting, you know, and then not suspect that the Shan-Chan will be on their side after that. And then a gray man is discovered, and they are warned of channelers nearby. In this moment, Min saves Tuan. This is a whole event with the Grey Man showing up and the channelers all in one moment. And then Swan saves Min by stopping one of the attacker's hearts, like from beating, with the one power. Basically, she learned what she knew from healing, which is kind of creepy, and I love it. Min is worried because of her vision she saw of Swan and Bryn that they need to stay together to stay alive, but Swan says that Matt's life is more important than hers. Matt is being attacked by 3 gray men. In the fighting, Swan does unfortunately die, and Min knows that Bryn will die soon because of this. In Egwene's perspective, she leads troops through the Sharrans, and she's desperate to reach Gawain. We see Demandred observe his own view of battle. Shenla, whom he cares for, says she failed to kill Matt, but she says the disruption of Matt's command post is what truly matters. But he still thinks that Matt is Lu's Theron because of his battle knowledge. Mael, aka Time, is using the true power, even balefire, to attack the enemy. And Demandred warns Time not to mess with his plans. He sees him as a threat, basically. Time's use of the true power messes with the pattern. In Rand's perspective, kind of along that same vein, he observes how the Dark One messes with time and the pattern. He mentions the Dark One having no gender, which I find very interesting. The Dark One is sort of just evil incarnate in a way, but like without balance, without any checks there. I don't know how to say his name. I want to say Yulin or because it starts with a J, Yulin, but he's the thief catcher, right? He fights at the base of the Heights, and he feels like he should be out catching criminals, not on the battlefield. I like this quote that he says. He says, "He figured that every man on the field felt they should be someplace else. The only thing to do was to keep on fighting." And I think that is, like, powerful because a lot of these final battles, everyone seems so competent in, like, other books. But in this one, you get the sense that these people are simply desperate and that anyone from anywhere is trying to do what they can. Andral and Pavara are wearing channeled disguises, and she's thinking to herself, but he can hear, of like maybe taking other warders. And in response to his jealousy, informs him like, hey, the guy I'm thinking of taking as a warder, Imarin, is gay. Like, He likes men. And they are led to Demandred, who is upset toward them and reveals Time's location. We see Galad fighting Sharan channelers. He comes across Gawain barely alive due to the warder bond. That's what's keeping him alive. He tells Gawain he will not be left without a brother, to which he is informed that Rand is also Galad's half-brother, and then Gawain tells him not to hate Rand. Gawain also admits that he was never quite good enough. I mean, he still tried to fight Demandred, which is a feat that very few could actually pull off. And then Gawain dies with Galad, and Galad is now wishing to enact revenge. Immediately we see Egwene sensing Gawain's death. She must be calmed by Sylviana before she kills her own people in her rage due to the warder bond and just general loss of someone she loves. Someone carries her off the battlefield and through a gateway. Tam uses his last arrow, then deciding to form 2 wedges with the men. There's a quote where he thinks, "But what was an archer without his bow? Still a 2 Rivers man, and still not willing to let this battle be lost." We're back with Tuon and company. She refuses to be killed by Damani channelers, but she's more open to the concept. She openly blames Mat for the attack they suffered, and then he starts a fight over her Shan-Chan ways so that they can feign a separation, and the spy will be thrown off a little bit. Also, Min is raised to the blood. She's like the fortune teller of Tuon's company. The Dark One shows Rand a possible future without compassion, where people will end another's life just for a little bit of gold or steal without any conscience. And it's also a world where they will believe that they've won but will not know any better. And then that part ends with Rand deciding he's going to show the opposite. Mat asks Min to stay with Tuon, and then Mat and Cared, however you say his name, they decide to join the front lines. We get to see Tam fighting with the sword, using the void, and Lan comments that the man who had given Rand the Heron-marked blade had truly earned it, which is a great compliment. Lan's a great swordsman as well. A gateway from Mayan brings children and women who can retrieve arrows and tinkers to find the wounded. In Elaine's perspective, she is closing Gareth Bryn's eyes as he has passed. He died charging into enemy lines after Swan's death due to the warder bond, and also he had a lot going on, unfortunately. Demandred sends balefire at them, and Brigitte notes that he's trying to draw out Luz Theron by attacking one of his loves. Galad goes after Demandred, saying that it feels right more than any other venture. He reveals himself as Rand's brother, which still surprises even him as he says it. And then as Demandred's kind of stalling and monologuing a little bit, he says to Demandred, "Do we fight, Son of Shadows, or do we talk?" And then they fight. I thought that was very cool. And I'm sure Verlaine would love that. And then we're back in the cave at the Shadow of Doom, where Nynaeve is using herbs and non-channeling practices to heal Alana because she cannot channel. The book states, if any of those women who made fun of Nynaeve's natural skills had been here instead of Nynaeve, the world would have ended. Because if Alana passes, due to the warder bond, Rand would go mad and the whole thing would fall apart. That being said, I'm still upset with Alana for non-consensually using the warder bond. That was like a low thing to do, frankly. I mean, in world, it's like, it's very bad. Mat meets Bashir on the battlefield. He wants to help fight even though he cannot lead because he had been corrupted on accident. Mat instructs Bashir to ride to Lan, saying that everyone has the Dark One's fingers on his heart. And that's the bloody truth. You can fight through it. I love Mat so much. Mat then brings Ogier and gets Teslin to make a gateway for the army to secure the top of the heights. In Egwene's perspective, she awakes in Mayenne, where Sylviana and Rosil worry for her after her loss of Gawain. She manages to connect with Saidar, and she demands to use Forest Sangreal and leans on the power and the emotion instead of being cool, calm, and collected, as Aes Sedai believe they're supposed to be. And part of that, there's probably some wisdom there, because if you overdo it with the emotions, you could burn out or hurt people. But in this sense, it's like, it's the last battle. She needs to lean into that grief or she will be useless, is basically kind of her thought. And then she then names Lailuin as her new warder, and she accepts, and Egwene returns to the battle with rage instead of serenity. Galad and Demandred fight. Demandred is impressed that Galad could even draw his blood, but then he slices, I literally wrote, then ... he slices off Galad's arm at the elbow. Not good. And then Galad spits at Demandred's feet and then passes out. So I love that. I like I don't know why I'm picturing that animated, like an anime fight scene for some reason. But I am. Not all of it, but just that scene, I guess, for now. I do picture a lot of things animated. I really like animation lately, so maybe that's why. Andral has presented himself as Nenson to Time, and it was kind of funny. Time weaves a new mask on Andral of himself. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna make you look like Andral. And Andral is like, what? And he makes him look like himself so he can sneak back to Logain and do spy things. Telling him to find it and kill Logain because Andral, like, is his companion that way. But I just think that's really funny. Just, like, he so got him. He was like, what is happening right now? I look like myself and I'm not in danger. And then as he leaves, he manages to steal the pouch that holds the seals because Time does not suspect him. And it's very sneaky. This is why I love Andral. He's so great, okay? Arganda works with Tam and Lan and informs Matt's dad that Matt is alive. I like that Matt's dad is nice in this. He is not so nice in the show. I have my own opinions about that, but then Demandred shows up looking for Luz Theron, bragging that Galad is dying. And then they've broken the Charon lines a bit, but still face many Trollocs. We're back with Rand, and he's creating a possible future without the Dark One. In this vision, he interacts with Elaine in Camelin and sees, like his children are there, but he sees that without the option to choose evil, one becomes empty. He notes something in Elaine's eyes that is, like, not fully there. She's not fully her own person. In this world that he created, there would be no weapons, no locks on doors, no hunger or theft, but personality would basically be lost. Depth and range of human experience. The Dark One claims that this shows that he will always win, whether he is there or not. On the battlefield, Matt rests atop a dead Trolloc. It's the only place to sit, of course. And he watches as flashes of light attack the Charons in the distance. Olver and Fael's caravan rescues captives in the blasted lands. Aravine betrays them, unable to resist the shadow and intending to send the horn to Demandred, but before she can, Oliver attacks her and stabs her lower back, which frees Fael from her bonds and the captive men from their pens. Leon or Leone, however you say it, I don't know. She and other sisters fight the Charons. She's dealing with a lot of grief and loss and destruction, but is very proud of the Aes Sedai. Egwene shows up and unleashes dozens of lines of fire at the Charons. I love the image of that as well. That's a scene that I'd really like to see. Talmanas and a few other of the members of the band are in a cave without any exits, trying to fix the dragons. And to sort of build up morale, he starts singing Jack of the Shadows with everyone to help them get through it. Fael chases after Aravine atop Bella. It was like the closest steed she had to chase her, and gets her with a knife and then retrieves the horn. Go Bella. Fael gives Olver the horn and tells him to get it to Matt. Logain raises Andral to full Ashban, and then he says he's going to get Demandred's Sangreal. I think it's the scepter? Yeah. Egwene fights with great power. She draws out time, and she's keeping Maurice, Narishma, and Leilwyn at her side as she attacks him. We get the perspective of Isla of the Tinkers. She is Aram's mom. She searches for the wounded and ponders over those who stand up and fight versus those who hide and scavenge among the bodies, and trying to decide which one's worse because she has believed for so long that the fighting is bad, but there's just something about those who take advantage of the other people fighting and don't do anything about it. We see Olver and Bella. She's running as fast as he can. He's pushing her to go to escape the Trollocs. And as they ride, Bella is hit with an arrow and she dies. And he says, I'm sorry, you were a good horse. You ran like wind couldn't have. I'm sorry. And then he has to hide in a crack of rocks with the horn. And I'm still so emotionally distraught over Bella. I say it out loud and I was reading through the end, flipping the pages. I had forgotten that this happened. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. She's been with us since the beginning. I am genuinely sad that she hasn't been in the show because, like, come on. It's like in the Fellowship of the Ring when they lose the ponies, but then they end up back with Tom Bombadil and he takes the time to let us know that they're okay. I was hoping that that was going to be Bella's experience, but it wasn't. And I just want to cry. It's the first time making this video that I've started to tear up. I don't know that it will be the last, but it's a pretty powerful moment, for sure. After hurling himself through a gateway, Logain attacks Demandred himself. The Charons at first stop him, but then he and Demandred fight with the power, using lava, lightning. But then Logain stops Balefire by throwing a rock at him and then escapes to be healed. He gets burned by lava. Yeah, it's pretty intense. Egwene is still feeding off of her rage and grief, nearly shielding Time, like getting so close, but then he escapes. It knows that he fought back, but he was weaker than she was, and I'm sure that must have scared him, as he deserves. Betrayer. Huron fights, smelling the rot and stench of war. Mat's army is struggling. Berlain is in Mayan, still running the sort of a medic house there in her house. She's taken to Galad. Honora saved him from bleeding out on the battlefield, but burned herself out in the process, as making the gateway was too much. Rand is seeing all of those who are sacrificing their lives. He's almost tempted to take the Dark One's offer to just give up. But then he's gearing up for another possible future. Time is thinking that the most important strategy is to destroy the Aes Sedai, as they are very powerful. Demandred shows up a little crazy and tells Time to use Balefire. He also tells Time not to attack him. There's a lot of tension and a power struggle going on there. Elaine's army has had to retreat, and then as they do so, supposed refugees attack, but they are Captain Mellar in disguise. He kills Brigitte, but hits her. I don't know if I can say that online. It's not like I get monetized, but still. And the pain of the bond hits Elaine. They do plan to kill Elaine, but then take her babies using a weave. And she can't fight back because they have a fox head medallion. And then they fake announce to the people that Elaine has fallen, so her troops will lose much of their motivation. Rand is then shown by the Dark One a nothingness, a balance between him and the Dark One. He is tempted to end the suffering by ending everything, but keeps his resolve, saying, "An end to existence is not peace. I made this choice before, we will continue." And then it says that the true pain began. Min is still with Tuon. Yulon is against returning to help, and Min with her weaving sees that he is under compulsion, but they don't catch the channeler who is controlling him before she flees. Tuon then orders them to return to the battlefield. Egwene wants to use Balefire to match Time's use, but knows it is dangerous. Lylwyn tells her it's time to retreat, and she thinks of what Perrin once said about Balefire. He once said, "It's only a weave." She weaves a combo of the 5 powers, channeling at times Balefire. Their weaves counter, but she overpowers him, and he is crystallized from the inside out. That image is so cool. Wouldn't you guys love to see that? I would. Okay. And if you remember previously, she did a weave to counter Balefire casually, and it just felt right, even though she didn't understand it. She realizes that this is the flame of Tar-Valon, this weave that she has done. She realizes that if she releases the power, that she'll burn out. In these last moments, she pushes Lylwyn through a gateway, telling her to break the seals the moment the light shines. Then she draws in more power than ever, than any Aes Sedai ever should, or ever has, and she releases her body into a column of light, destroying Sharans and sealing the cracks made by Time's Balefire. And in this moment, as the flame of Tar-Valon, she dies. This was so powerful, and I was also so devastated and distraught, and also go her. I was sad because of what this battle required of people, but what a powerful moment for her, and I was also so impressed. We immediately switched to Rand, who senses her death, crying out, "Not her." Basically, not the woman I said I would protect. They have that history together, and it's really devastating to him. Leon sees that the cracks made by Balefire have been filled in with crystal, and they know the Amyrlin has fallen. And then Galad, still recovering, tells Berlain to return the medallion to Mat. Mat learns of Egwene's death. Half of the Aes Sedai were lost, the rest exhausted, and all Sharran channelers were destroyed by Egwene's final move. And then Mat sees that Lan, atop Mandarb, his horse, is charging toward Demandred. Alvar remains frightened. He's hiding as the Trollocs are trying to get him, and then Loyal sees Lan go after Demandred, thinking he ought to witness the fall of the last king of the Machieri. There's also a tender moment with him and Aerith, and they're both battle-worn, comforting each other. Tam and his men fire lit arrows at the lines of Trollocs as Lan charges toward them to help them out. And I love picturing this. I think this is the one for some reason that I pictured the most, the scene with Lan. I picture this darkness, this sort of blue sky or light around Lan as he's atop Mandarb, this powerful music, and then you see the arrows fly over him, hitting the Trollocs. Wouldn't that be so powerful? I just feel like the lighting in that scene could be particularly beautiful and just really empowering for the moment. Lan then attacks Demandred with aggressive forms until he very quickly draws a little blood from Demandred. When asked who he is, Lan says, "I am the man who will kill you." He is so done. I love Lan. We then see Min traveling through a gateway back to Marilor. In Rand's perspective, he sees the suffering and danger to those he loves, but a quiet voice in his mind says, "Let go." Lan fights Demandred until he gets an opening, when Demandred is too confident and therefore weak enough for Lan to sheath the sword. If you don't remember, this is a very important form that Lan teaches Rand, where in order to succeed in your duel, you allow yourself to be lost or compromised. And the way that he performs this is he rams himself forward on Demandred's sword. And before Demandred can pull back, now that they are in close quarters, Lan stabs him in the throat. And then as he sort of loses consciousness, he senses Nynaeve's own pain and fear, and he senses love. And the words he says to Demandred before he defeats him is, "I did not come here to win, I came here to kill you. Death is lighter than a feather." And that line just... I love these people. I love them so much. Okay, that is the end of the last battle, chapter 37. And we go straight to chapter 38. So it's like it's been gearing up. A lot of them are kind of losing and beaten down. Rand is tempted to accept the Dark One's bargains, even though he knows he won't. It's just that pain and that weakness in him and that fear of what will happen to his loved ones. All this is happening, battles are being lost, Elaine's in danger, and Lan is like, absolutely no way. So he got the medallion from Galad, and he's like, I'm gonna get Demandred, and he does, and he gets him. So I like that there is this evening between them because with the medallion, they had to duel. At the opening of chapter 38, titled The Place That Was Not, I have to read what Rand says. Basically, he is incredibly devastated. He feels like he has to save everyone. He sees Lan fall, and something about that, plus Egwene's death and everyone else's, really hits him. He hears, "Let go. It is their choice to make. He wanted so badly to protect them, the people who believed in him. Their deaths and the danger they faced were an enormous weight upon him. How could a man just let go? Wasn't that letting go of responsibility? Or was it giving the responsibility to them?" Rand squeezed his eyes shut, thinking of all those who had died for him, of Egwene, whom he had sworn to himself to protect. "You fool," her voice in his head, fond but sharp. "Egwene, am I not allowed to be a hero too? You marched to your death, yet you forbid anyone else from doing so? Let go, Rand. Let us die for what we believe, and do not try to steal that from us. You have embraced your death. Embrace mine." Tears leaked from the corner of his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Why?" "I've failed." "No, not yet you haven't." The Dark One flayed him. He huddled before that vast nothingness, unable to move. He screamed in agony. And then he let go. He let go of the guilt, he let go of the shame for having not saved Egwene and all the others. He let go of the need to protect her, to protect all of them. He let them be heroes. And then he lets go of all of their names, accepting their sacrifice. And then it says, "Elena was last. We are reborn," Rand thought, "so we can do better the next time. So do better." And then he stands once again to face the Dark One. I wrote in parentheses in my notes to try not to cry when I read that, and I did a really good job. But I did cry the first time writing that down and the first time reading it. We then see Shenla announce to the Sharans that Demandred is dead. Rand stays steady even as the Dark One attacks, rebuking the Dark One's claims of control. And then at the news of Lan's death, Mat pushes forward. And then he says basically to Lan, "You bloody wonderful man, you did it." Chapter 39 is titled Those Who Fight. Rand tells the Dark One it was never about me, and that the Dark One can't beat these people down even if he kills them. He cannot break their will. Rand holds out his palm on which are the world, and then the battlefield, and 2 bodies on the ground. Mat is starting to believe that they can break the Trollocs. The Dark One says to Rand, "The son of battles, I will take him. I will take them all, adversary, as I took the king of nothing." Argonda then tells Mat that they should fall back, but he says he just needs luck. Rand tells the Dark One he was wrong about one thing. We see Oliver, still stuck and terrified, and in desperation and pain and fear, he raises the horn of Villier to his lips. Mat hears Rand's voice, and then they all hear Rand, as he says, and I'm going to read this from the book as well. Rand tells the Dark One that he was so very wrong, That one you have tried to kill many times, Rand says. That one who lost his kingdom, that one from whom you took everything. Lurching, bloodied from the sword strike to his side, the last king of the Machieri stumbled to his feet. Lan thrust his hand into the air, holding by its hair the head of Demandred, general of the Shadow's armies. That man, Rand shouted. That man still fights. And then Mat hears the Horn of Valir. Hanlon / Captain Millar threatens to kill Elaine when he and the Dreadlord are taken out by arrows. Then Birgitte stands over her own body, smiling at Elaine. Mat rides to land and Narishma heals him up until consciousness, so he's still pretty weak. And then he chats with Arthur Hawkwing, who says that the heroes of the Horn always fight for the light. Oliver is rescued by Noel, who is Jane Farstrider, and Oliver is like, whoa, he's a hero of the Horn. We go to chapter 40, titled Wolf Brother. Elaine and Birgitte talk of writing together to inform her people that she's not dead. Birgitte has her memories back, which fills her with joy, and even though she is here presently, her body is still there, and Elaine still senses the loss of the warder bond, and she knows that she cannot bond Birgitte. Like, again, it won't quite work that way. Aviendha sees Elias arrive with wolves to fight the Darkhounds. And then she sees Hessalam / Graendal, and she tries to fight her, but has to hide away until Amos and Catswain show up. Elaine, badly, swings the sword at Trollocs as they ride, but it motivates her people. Mat continues to fight on the heights as Tuon's Shanchan army arrive from the sky via Gateway, and then they learn that the dragons, the weapons, are back. Grady is upset at Mat, kind of stewing to himself, over the sacrifice of these poor villagers that he's seeing die, who are fighting with, like, kitchen tools. But then he makes a gateway back to the same village, and somehow these people are still alive, and some members of the band. In a previous book, Mat stumbles across a very strange village where the people fight and are violent every night, and even if they die, they wake up the next day in the village as if nothing happened, and that's kind of their whole life. And Mat uses this to his advantage. He's like, I've got another card up my sleeve. And so the villagers fight without really fear of their own death, and the band who stays in the village can have the same effect in order to continue to fight. Realizing that that's what's going on, Grady's like, I have no idea what's going on, and then he destroys the dam, which releases the river into the canyon. In chapter 41, titled A Smile, Andral and Pavara think the dragons need protecting more than the scepter of time needs to be found. So Logain really wants that scepter, but they are like, the dragons are more important. We see Maggedian making herself look like Demandred to take control of the troops of the Sharans, and just when she thinks the dragons have been destroyed, a gateway opens behind her and a dragon is fired at her. It's awesome. So Talmanas continues to have them open gateways and fire at enemies while being able to protect the dragons safely in their little cave. Chapter 42 is titled Impossibilities. Aviendha and Amos make plans to fight Hessalam with Catswain and others. The Bowl of the Winds is not being controlled very well, and storm clouds form and the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai. Someone tries to attack Aviendha with a spear, but Aviendha weaves fire, hitting his chest, and it is revealed that she hit Ruarg, who was under compulsion. We see Mishrael and Alviarin and others who are led on a little, trick after who they think is Rand, who is actually Andral in disguise. He takes them to a steading where they cannot channel, and the Ogier get them. The Ogier explained to Povara that the captives will be cared for, that they will not be mistreated or killed, as she believes they should be, and they state that maybe a few decades of peace will help them change their outlook on the world. And then Andral and Povara return to the field of Marilor, to the Caemlyn refugees, where Trollocs are now slaughtering them. Back to Aviendha, she weaves a spear of fire, going toward Hessalam / Graendal, and fighting off Balefire with weaves of spirit. As the earth is sort of rumbling, she leaps into the air and sinks her spear, her fire spear, into Hessalam, point first, and then they both vanish. Chapter 43 is titled A Field of Glass. Logain thinks over how he's been broken and is desperate to find Time's scepter. Ashanchan sends Egwene's orders to break the seals. He agrees to them, but then Gabrel, who's with him, consents that he does not intend to obey. Andral begs for Logain's help as Trollocs slaughter more children. We then see Mat ask if he is one of the heroes, but is told no, though not why, and he thinks it's because he doesn't want to be a hero of the Horn. He doesn't want to be called at anyone's whim. And then he sees that Elaine is alive, and that the river is washing Trollocs away. He can sense that Rand needs him, but before he leaves, he suggests to Hawkwing that he meet Tuon. And then Rand sees that Mat, a Two Rivers gambler, has won the battle at Merilor, and he welcomes death. Hessalam seals her wound, and then holds Aviendha shielded, and Aviendha is too weak to do anything, and she even drops her knife. Chapter 44 is titled Two Craftsmen. Perrin wakes at Berline's palace. He waits for healing so he can have energy and have the fatigue healed off him. He is worried that he's pushed himself too hard, but Master Luhan has a really good quote about that. I'm going to read that as well. When Perrin worries that he's made a mistake in pushing himself too hard, Luhan says, "If there ever was a time to push yourself, this is it. You may see in yourself someone who lets himself go too far, but that's not the man I see. If anything, Perrin, I've seen in you someone who has learned to hold himself back. I've watched you hold a teacup with extreme delicacy, as if you feared breaking it with your strength. I've seen you clasp hands with a man, holding his hand in yours with such care, never squeezing too hard. I've watched you move with delicate reserve, so that you don't shove anyone or knock anything over. Those were good lessons for you to learn, son. You needed control, but in you I've seen a boy grow into a man who doesn't know how to let those barriers go. I see a man who's frightened of what happens when he gets a little out of control. I realize you do what you do because you're afraid of hurting people, but Perrin, it's time to stop holding back." And I just really like that tenderness that everyone sees in Perrin and he does not see in himself. I think it's very powerful. After discussing this with Master Luhan, Perrin returns to the wolf dream, knowing that Rand still needs him, and that Gaul is still stuck in the dream. Tom observes the world's end while smoking his pipe, thinking on what words he would use to describe this in a ballad. He comes up with the word exquisite as the right choice, and then he thinks back on how he ended up here, and how things would be so different if he hadn't met everyone. And then he sees Cadsuane walk up toward him. She gives him, like, a semi-friendly nod, and then as her back is turned toward him, as she tries to walk into the pit of doom, he hits her with a knife. Without moving his pipe or standing up, he gets her like that, and it's revealed that she was a sister of the Black Aja in disguise, and he's dealt with this with several people trying to sneak in, and has defeated them every time. So, nice try, guys. Chapter 45 is Tendrils of Mist. Grady, who is with Ulver, cannot make a gateway to Shal Ghul for some reason. So he takes Mat to a Shan-Chan camp instead. Mat also sees Noel/Jane Farstrider and is like, yeah, that's my buddy. We were friends. Padden Fane, who is also Shaisam, observes the killing, celebrating it, and his mind has sort of become the mists. He's eager to end Rand. Gaul encounters Slayer in the wolf dream, still alone, and Slayer claims he is a king there, and then Perrin shows up and from behind him says, "You are no king." Gaul is wounded and runs away as the men begin to fight, and then the chapter closes with Mat and Ulver struggling to ride and then crashing into Rockin. They lose the banner in the process, but then Ulver blows the horn. Chapter 46, To Awaken. Rand returns to the pattern. He raises Callandor at Moradin, who blocks it, and then Moradin throws a dagger at Alana. The knife hits Alana, but it wakes her up, and she's just strong enough, due to Nynaeve's natural healing with herbs, to be able to release the bond with Rand, so that it will not devastate him when she passes. In their fight between Rat and Moradin stabs his own hand, which somehow affects Rand, and makes him drop Callandor. We then see Perrin is finally able to let go as he fights Slayer. He chases him in and out of the dream, and somehow both the hammer and young Bull's teeth get Slayer. It's like he's accepting the loss of control in order to overpower his enemy, and in the end, Slayer is killed. Then Perrin takes a group of Aiel to stand at the mouth of the Pit of Doom, and he howls with the horn. Perrin and Mat meet up, discussing Fael and her whereabouts, and then also Padden Fane being on the field, when then a silver mist of Mashadar spears Mat through with a chest, and Mat falls off his horse. In chapter 47, titled Watching the Flow Writhe, Aviendha tries to unweave the gateway, while Hessalam tries to weave compulsion on her. But Aviendha picks up the wrong thread and the gateway explodes. Padden Fane thinks Mat is a corpse, but then Mat grabs his throat and takes his knife and ends him with it. It's a very powerful moment where he's like, "You think that knife could get me? Bro, it got me once, but just like a sickness. I had it already, I'm not going to get it again. It's kind of funny. And actually really interesting point world and magic-wise. Perrin then eventually finds Gaul and helps him to safety, and he wants to find Fael, but he knows that Rand needs him. And the thought sort of is, if not Perrin, then who? Moradin realizes that Callandor is a true power sangreal, but he does not care that using the true power will mean death, as he wants oblivion. Nynaeve and Moiraine take advantage of Callandor's flaw. They take control of Moradin and then link with Rand. Rand seizes the Dark One through the bore, unable to shut off the true power as it's become too out of control, and then light explodes from Rand. In chapter 48, titled A Brilliant Lance, Elaine senses Rand and sees a light shoot into the sky, and she knows that the end has come. Tom sees the same light out of Shal Ghul, and so does Min as she senses Rand through the bond. Aviendha sees the light, knows Rand is winning, and then realizes that the compulsion rebounded in the gateway explosion, making Graendal now her loyal servant. And then it cuts to Logain, who's helping a toddler return to his mother. And it basically shows that when Andral came begging for his help, instead of searching for the scepter that he desired so badly, he went to help innocent people. He thinks himself a fool, but then he realizes that the people don't hate him, that they're not afraid of him as they have so often been, but that they look at him in awe and gratitude. And then he, in the moment of the light shooting into the sky, he breaks the seals on the Dark One. Chapter 49 is titled Light and Shadow. In the Wolf Dream, Perrin enters the Pit of Doom, where Lanfear weaves compulsion to try to get him to end Nynaeve and Moiraine. In this inner debate, while he is under compulsion, he thinks of Fael, and he thinks that he loves her, and then that allows him to overpower Lanfear's weave of compulsion just enough to snap her neck. And even though he still feels that weird bond with her, he's been able to overpower her. He looks up to Rand, saying, "Go, do what you must. As always, I will watch your back." Rand starts to kill the Dark One, but sees the world of imbalance if he does. And then with a new form of power, of light, he seals him away. Moiraine watches from outside the cave as Rand and Moradin stand in the light, and it consumes all. And then it shifts to the epilogue. Rand, knowing that he could not erase the Dark One and destroy him completely without taking away people's ability to choose between right and wrong, is able to seal off the Dark One with this new weave of light and able to overpower him without Saidin being tainted ever again. The epilogue is titled To See the Answer. Rand carries Moradin's body, and an unfamiliar Aiel-looking woman tells him that's what he needs to do. It's sort of vague. It's very interesting. Then Mat leaves the dagger and Fane behind, with his hat and Ashendari with him. Perrin finds where they're trying to heal Rand. Nynaeve is emotional about Egwene's loss, and Perrin asks Lan where Fael might be. Loial is searching for Mat. Nynaeve is upset that Moradin improves, and it's noted that Min, Aviendha, and Elaine don't seem too upset. Mat goes to Tuan, who tells him that she is now pregnant, which means she could kill him now. And he says, well, we'll have to see what we can work out. Tell me, do you ever play dice? I don't know how I feel about that relationship. We can get into that at a later date. Perrin searches for Fael, but collapses exhausted. And then we see Moghedien getting collared by one of the Damani. It's perfect. Nynaeve announces Rand's death, but knows his lovers know something is going on. Like, they know something that she doesn't know. In the Wolf Dream, Perrin is able to find Fael by finding a broken falcon, and he shifts back to the real world to take her to Nynaeve to be healed. Birgitte says a final farewell to Elaine as she is born somewhere else. She warns Elaine to be wise about the horn, and tells her that Oliver is hiding it somewhere. And then she mentions she'll only be a few years younger than her love, Gaidal. And I wrote, after that, because it's sort of theorized Gaidal, he's noted to be an unattractive man, and Oliver is noted to be a very unattractive young lad. And if he's just like a young kid, and then he would just be a few years older than Birgitte. Maybe if they meet as adults, she'll, fall in love with him. At Rand's funeral, Tam lights Rand's pyre. He says, "You did well, my boy. You did so well." Min and Elaine and Aviendha sense the warder bond still, though they must try to convince the others that he's truly gone. They still feel like they have to emphasize that. We see Rand wake up in Moradin's body, taking a few items and a horse, watching his own pyre burn. It's not really a secret. You kind of get the sense that Rand isn't actually dead, because the whole time the ladies are like, "Oh no, that's so sad." But they're not sad because he's not actually gone. And then as Rand leaves, he nods to Cadsuane as she sees him, and she recognizes that his funeral is not actually his funeral. And it's noted that Moradin is being burned as a hero in Rand's body, having died in Rand's body. Very interesting. Rand leaves, watching the women he loves and hoping that they'll follow him eventually. He realizes that he can no longer channel, and it actually brings him some relief, but he has a good pipe and a heron-marked blade. And in the end it reads, "The wind blew southward through knotted forests, over shimmering plains and toward lands unexplored. This wind, it was not the ending. There are no endings and never will be endings to the turning of the wheel of time, but it was an ending." And then the quote from Loyal's book in The Dragon Reborn says at the end, "He came like the wind touched everything, and like the wind was gone." So that is the ending to the Wheel of Time. In a lot of ways, the epilogue didn't provide everything I wanted. I think to show what they'd been fighting for, it would have been cool to see more of where their lives went after that, and kind of the healing that could take place, and maybe a little bit more knots tied up with characters, their plot lines and stuff. But I still really loved the last battle and the end to A Memory of Light. And I think it's summed up best in chapter 39, Those Who Fight, when Rand says, and I'm just going to read it to you. He's telling the Dark One, "It was not about me. It's never been about me. It was about a woman torn and beaten down, cast from her throne and made a puppet. A woman who had crawled when she had to. That woman still fought. It was about a man that love repeatedly forsook, a man who found relevance in a world that others would have let pass them by, a man who remembered stories and who took fool boys under his wing when the smarter move would have been to keep on walking. That man still fought. It was about a woman with a secret, a hope for the future, a woman who had hunted the truth before others could, a woman who had given her life, then had it returned. That woman still fought. It was about a man whose family was taken from him, but who stood tall in his sorrow and protected those he could. It was about a woman who refused to believe that she could not help, could not heal those who had been harmed. It was about a hero who insisted with every breath that he was anything but a hero. It was about a woman who would not bend her back while she was beaten, and who shone with the light for all who watched, including Rand. It was about them all." Anyway, that is that's what summarizes my love for the Wheel of Time. There's a lot in it that's kind of muddy, or side characters I don't super care about. There's a lot in it that's high fantasy in ways that I have a hard time getting invested in, but there's just these characters whom I love so much, and I've had a great time reading. And in the end, I love Rand's final face-off with the Dark One. I think his arc is so much more than I realize and then I really give credit to. It's very powerful for me and, well, for a lot of people, and I love it so much. This series means a lot to me, and I'm so glad to have read it. After attending the Wheel of Time panel at Dragonsteel and seeing the people there to whom this series means so much, I felt a really deep connection with the Wheel of Time, and it sort of brought that back in me and made me very grateful for it. I've also been able to interact with a lot of you through the Wheel of Time. That's sort of been the thing that's been keeping this going, and I appreciate everyone for sticking around for that. I obviously read a lot of other stuff, and I don't read a ton of high fantasy all the time, but I do have there's a tender spot in my heart for high fantasy, and for this series in particular. Let's talk more Wheel of Time in the future. I'd love to hear any thoughts in the comments about the ending. Let's have some discussions, and I will see y'all later with another video. Bye.